Why do some experiences stay with us, get stuck in our memories, while others seem to lose their grip over time? It turns out one of the simplest tools to help us deal with these experiences isn't actually talking about it, it's writing about it. Not that writing about things magically erases the pain, but what it can do is change our relationship with that pain. And I'm going to talk about why. Often when people think about writing, they're thinking about recording something that happened, say in a diary or writing a journal, any way to capture memories of an event. But expressive writing isn't really about recording events. It's about exploring them. And there's a subtle but important difference. We don't write because we already understand what happened. Often we write because we don't. Expressive writing is surprisingly simple. You choose one experience that's bothering you, say that awkward conversation with someone or that mistake you made, and then you write about it 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time over a period of several days. And you write whatever comes to your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your frustrations, fears. You don't worry about grammar. There's no editing, there's no audience, and there's no pressure to sound intelligent. Just be honest. Research has found that although this kind of writing can be really awkward and uncomfortable at first, that many begin noticing something interesting happening after writing about this event for several days. They stop simply reliving the event, they begin making sense of it. I think one of the reasons for this is that chaos has no structure. Stories do. When something painful happens, our memories often feel scattered. Pieces, questions, what if, I should have, if only, those types of things we say to ourselves. Writing asks us to slow down, to organize, to label, to connect one moment to another. And when we organize an experience, we often begin to regain a sense of control over that experience. Not because the past changes, but because our understanding does. I learned this in a way that was unexpected. A few years ago, I was violently assaulted and was left with a traumatic brain injury. And then a few years after that, while I was preparing for the criminal trial, what I found myself doing was getting up early every morning and writing about my experience. And at first, I thought I was simply documenting what had happened because I was preparing to write my memoir. So I was trying to create a story, create a narrative out of my experience. But something else was happening. While I was researching my medical records, I was reading the newspaper articles, and I read the journal that my husband kept while I was in the hospital. I was in a coma for the first week and then in the hospital and rehab for 2 months, and he documented what was happening every single day. He made notes, which really helped to fill in the memory gaps that would otherwise have been lost. So little by little, scattered pieces became a story. Writing didn't erase what happened. It didn't make me feel less angry or bewildered. It didn't remove the grief, but it helped me to organize the chaos. And when the trial finally arrived, I realized that I understood my experience differently than I had months before, even years before. One thing I love about expressive writing is that nobody has to read it. You can just write bullet points, half-finished sentences, doodles, swear words, messy handwriting. It isn't creative writing, it's not a memoir yet, and it's not a school assignment. It's simply a conversation with yourself. Sometimes writing isn't recording your thoughts, sometimes it's discovering them. Something interesting happens after enough writing is done. Eventually, you stop asking what happened and begin asking, what does this mean? And that's where stories begin. Stories don't simply tell us what happened, they help us understand why it mattered. So whether you're writing a memoir, sharing your experience with a friend, or simply trying to understand your own life, you're doing something profoundly human. You're making meaning. I'd like to leave you with something to try. Tonight, think of one experience you've been replaying in your mind. It doesn't have to be traumatic. It could simply be something that's been bothering you. Set a timer for 10 or 15 minutes and write continuously. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about making any sense. And don't worry if no one ever reads it, because you probably won't share it. Just write, then put it away. Then come back to it a day or two later and see if anything has changed in how you perceive that event. The goal of expressive writing isn't to produce beautiful writing. The goal is to leave the page understanding yourself a little bit better than when you sat down to start writing. Sometimes we think healing happens because time passes, but sometimes healing happens because we finally find the words. If you've tried expressive writing or you're thinking about trying it, I'd love to hear about your experience in the comments. And if you ever turn that expressive writing into a narrative form, into a story, or into memoir. And if conversations about storytelling, resilience, and making meaning of difficult experiences and moments interest you, I'd love to have you join me for the next video.